Before the 90s supermodels took over the world, there was a group of women who defined absolute elegance. In the 1950s, modeling wasn't just about wearing clothes, it was high-art performance choreography. They transformed Dior's cinched waists and massive ball gowns into living, breathing sculptures. But behind the flawless studio lighting lay rigid beauty standards, secret padding, and intense physical demands. Today, we are uncovering the fascinating hidden world of the original 1950s supermodels.
She is a testament to timeless beauty and resilience. Carmen de la Reffish is not just a model. She is a living legend, an icon who has graced the world's runways and magazine covers for over 7 decades. Born in 1931 in New York, Carmen's early life was marked by financial struggles. Her mother, a frustrated dancer, and her musician father often left her in foster care or with relatives. Poverty was a constant companion, but it also instilled in her a fierce independence. Her discovery was a stroke of fate. At just 15, while riding a bus, she was approached by a photographer's wife. Soon after, she signed with Vogue, earning a meager $7.50 an hour. Her striking features, the elegant neck, the high cheekbones, the silver hair she would later embrace, quickly made her a muse for Salvador Dali and other great artists. She became one of the youngest models ever to appear on the cover of American Vogue. The modeling world is notoriously fleeting, but Carmen redefined longevity. Throughout her career, she faced financial hardship and personal loss, including the dramatic collapse of the stock market in 2008 that wiped out her life savings for a second time. Yet she always found a way back. Each comeback was a powerful statement that true style and grace never expire, driven by her professional commitment and sheer will. In her later years, Carmen transcended the role of a supermodel to become a cultural phenomenon. She is recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's oldest working model. Her signature look, the pristine white hair and impeccable poise, is instantly recognizable across the globe. She proves that age is merely a number, and passion is the true key to endurance and relevance in any industry. From a struggling teenager to a high-fashion goddess, Carmen de la Refish's story is a compelling narrative of elegance, perseverance, and timeless beauty. She continues to inspire generations, walking runways and proving that one's best work can be done at any age. In the glamorous world of 1950s fashion, one face stood out. Not for a distant, icy gaze, but for a radiant, joyful smile. This was Susan Abraham, a model who redefined elegance with her infectious energy. Hailed as a classic English rose, Susan was in fact Irish-American. Born in Burma in 1930, her early life was a tapestry of cultures, growing up in Dublin and Connecticut before making the move that would define her career, London. It was there, sharing a flat with another aspiring model, that Susan's journey into the heart of fashion began. She quickly graced the pages of prestigious magazines like Vogue and the UK's Vanity Fair, but it was her spirit that truly set her apart. In an era of detached poses, Susan laughed. She giggled and flashed broad grins at the camera, a refreshing burst of authenticity and life. Collaborating frequently with the legendary photographer Norman Parkinson, she represented a new wave in the mid-century, a shift towards youth and vitality. Her career was relatively short, as she later embraced the roles of wife and mother, with that same characteristic joy. Susan Abraham passed away in 2020, but her legacy endures, an unforgettable figure who proved that the most captivating charm comes from a genuine love for life. From the quiet rolling farmlands of 1940s Missouri to the dazzling high-fashion world of New York's Fifth Avenue, some stories feel like they are pulled straight from a Hollywood script. This is the story of Evelyn Tripp, a young woman whose life changed in a single serendipitous moment. Picture this. A clerical assistant simply enjoying a day of shopping is spotted by a sharp-eyed fashion scout from the prestigious Francis Gill agency. In that instant, a star was born, and the world of fashion was about to meet one of its most unforgettable faces. Evelyn's ascent was nothing short of meteoric. She quickly became the face of the 1950s, her distinctive features gracing the covers of iconic magazines like Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Mademoiselle. In the bustling photo studios of the era, she collaborated with visionary photographers who were shaping the very look of modern fashion. It was her work with William Klein that produced one of the most celebrated fashion photographs of all time, the arresting and artistic Smoke Plus Veil. This single image, a masterpiece of shadow and suggestion, captured the essence of her unique appeal and cemented her place in the industry's upper echelon. Even today, Evelyn Tripp's legacy endures as a timeless icon of elegance and sophistication. A journey through her most famous portraits reveals a remarkable versatility. She could be the epitome of classic grace one moment and a bold modern muse the next. Her ability to convey emotion and story through a single glance set her apart. Looking back at her incredible body of work, it is clear that Evelyn Tripp was more than just a model. She was a legendary figure who helped define an entire decade of fashion history, leaving an indelible mark that continues to inspire. Before the age of social media influencers, there were the icons who defined the look of an era. In the golden age of haute couture, one name stood out: Jean Patchett. Born in 1926, Patchett rose to prominence in the late 1940s, becoming a leading face of the 1950s fashion scene. She wasn't just a model, she was a phenomenon. Unlike the more friendly models of the time, Patchett brought a new kind of allure to the runway and the camera. She was cool, distant, and sophisticated. A young American goddess in Paris couture, as photographer Irving Penn once described her. Her iconic status was cemented in 1950 with two legendary Vogue covers. The first, shot by Erwin Blumenfeld, captured her striking profile against a dramatic backdrop. The second, a masterpiece by Irving Penn, showcased her elegance in a dramatic high-fashion setting. Patchett worked alongside other fashion legends like Dovima, Dorian Leigh, and Suzy Parker, all of whom were pioneers in establishing what we now call the supermodel. She was the face that launched 1,000 dreams, a symbol of the glamour and aspiration of the 1950s. From the exclusive ateliers of Paris to the bustling streets of New York, Jean Patchett was the epitome of high fashion. Her career, which continued into the early 1960s, paved the way for a new generation of models who would become household names themselves. Jean Patchett, the original supermodel who set the standard for glamour and elegance for decades to come. Have you ever heard of Theo Graham? If not, you've almost certainly seen her face. Back in the 40s and 50s, she was one of the biggest models in America. Born in New York, Theo actually dreamed of being an artist, not a model. But fate, as it often does, had a different plan. When she moved back to the city as a teenager, she became close friends with a young, aspiring photographer named Richard Avedon. He hired her as his assistant, but soon everyone wanted to put Theo in front of the camera, not behind it. At first, Avedon was against it, but the offers just kept pouring in. She quickly became one of the highest-paid models of her time. Avedon finally changed his mind and started photographing her himself. Together, they experimented with dynamic poses and fresh compositions. Theo, with her graceful long neck and limbs, became one of Avedon's first muses. Through their collaboration, Avedon developed his revolutionary, spontaneous style that changed fashion photography forever. She wasn't just a model, she was a pioneer. Ever scroll through old photos and wonder about the stories behind the faces? Well, let me introduce you to one you probably don't know, but definitely should: Georgia Hamilton. Born in California in 1925, Georgia wasn't just a model. She was one of the original Ford models, a true trailblazer from the late 1940s and 50s. Think about that golden age of glamour. She was right at the heart of it. Her stunning features weren't just seen, they were celebrated. She graced the pages of legendary magazines like Life and Harper's Bazaar. With her captivating looks and charming personality, she wasn't just wearing the fashion, she was defining it. She set a standard for beauty and grace that still resonates today. Georgia passed away in 1995, but her legacy is immortalized in those breathtaking photographs. They capture a moment in time, an essence of youth and elegance that's simply timeless. She was an icon, a symbol of an era, and her influence continues to inspire long after she left the runway. Georgia Hamilton, a name worth remembering. It's the 1940s, a world grappling with war, but also a time of incredible glamour and style. And right at the heart of that glamour was a face you couldn't forget, Maureen Zolman. Her look defined the era. With her elegant poise and captivating eyes, she was the dream girl of the 1940s. She graced the covers of the biggest fashion magazines, including the holy grail for any model, Vogue. But it wasn't just high fashion. Flip through any magazine from that time, and you'd see her everywhere. She was the face of everything from luxury cars to everyday soap. Her smile sold a lifestyle, a promise of elegance and hope during a very turbulent time. But here's the most amazing part. After reaching the absolute peak of the fashion world, after her face was known across the country, she simply walked away. She chose a quiet life over the constant flash of the camera. Maureen Zolman wasn't just a model. She was a woman who defined an era and then chose her own path, a true icon. New York, 1930. A little girl named Stella Tenbrook is born to a French ballerina and a German dreamer who'd smuggled himself into the country, hoping to dance on Broadway. But then the Great Depression hits, and when Stella is just 2, her father vanishes. Gone. It was a tough time. Millions were jobless, and stories like this were tragically common. Raised by her strong mother and grandmother, Stella grew up speaking both French and English. By 17, she was fiercely independent and desperate to escape her stuffy home life. She did a year at Syracuse University, but the real world was calling. She left, became a secretary, and married the first of her 3 husbands. But her destiny was fashion. In 1949, at just 19, she was discovered by designer Adele Simpson. This was her big break. By 22, she was in Paris, the heart of haute couture, working for giants like Dior and Balenciaga. But one designer captured her heart above all, Jacques Fatt. She wasn't just his model, she was his muse. With her tiny waist, elegant walk, and powerful feminine energy, she embodied his vision. Stella Tenbrook became the star. But in 1955, at the peak of her fame, she walked away from it all for motherhood. A true icon who lived life entirely on her own terms. Ever heard of a model who was so iconic, she became the living embodiment of a legendary fashion house? Let's travel back to the glamorous 1950s and talk about the incredible Jackie Maisel. Spelled J-A-C-K-Y or sometimes J-A-C-K-I-E, Maisel was one of the most sought-after faces in French haute couture. While she was a favorite of all the top designers of the era, her name became synonymous with one in particular, Givenchy. Yes, that Givenchy. Before Audrey Hepburn became his ultimate muse, Jackie Maisel was one of the original mannequins cabine for the house of Givenchy. She was one of the key models who brought Hubert de Givenchy's revolutionary, elegant designs to life. She wasn't just wearing the clothes, she was helping to create the entire Givenchy mystique. If you were to pick up a copy of a high-fashion magazine in the 50s, like L'Officiel or Jardins de Mode, you couldn't miss her. Page after page, her striking features and graceful poses defined the very essence of Parisian chic. She was the face of an era, a walking work of art who helped shape the future of fashion. So next time you think of 1950s glamour, remember the name Jackie Maisel. Imagine the world of 1950s high fashion. Glamour, elegance, and crippling stage fright. Meet Anne Gunning, one of the most iconic faces of the era, who had a secret fear that defined her entire career. Anne started out as a house model in Dublin for the Irish designer Sybil Connolly. She was stunning, and it didn't take long for the world to notice. In 1953, she landed on the cover of Life magazine, photographed in a dramatic red Kinsale cloak against an ancient castle. Overnight, she became a global sensation. She was the it girl of the 50s. Every major designer wanted her. The legendary Coco Chanel personally asked Anne to walk in her runway shows. But Anne said no. In fact, she said no to almost everyone. Throughout her entire, hugely successful career, she only ever walked in one fashion show. Just one. Why? She was terrified of the runway. She once said, "That sea of faces glaring at me was too daunting." She was convinced she would fall. So she stuck to what she knew she could master, photographic modeling, and master it she did. She chose to conquer her world from the still silent frame of a photograph, leaving an unforgettable mark on fashion history, all without ever taking that dreaded step onto the catwalk. You've probably never heard of Fiona Campbell Walter, but in the 1950s, she was one of the highest paid models in the world. With her striking features and aristocratic air, she was the muse of photographers like Cecil Beaton and designers like Christian Dior. She was the face of an era, gracing the covers of Vogue and Life magazine. At the peak of her fame, she did something unexpected. In 1956, she married the incredibly wealthy Baron Hans Heinrich Thyssen-Bornemisza and retired from the runway completely. She became Baroness Fiona, had 2 children and lived a life of unimaginable luxury. But the fairy tale didn't last. After their divorce, Fiona found herself back in the public eye, but for a very different reason. She began a passionate, high-profile affair with a man 16 years her junior, Alexander Onassis, the handsome son of the shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis. The age gap caused a scandal, but the two were deeply in love. Tragically, their romance was cut short when Alexander died in a plane crash in 1973, leaving Fiona heartbroken and forever changing the course of her life. You've probably never heard of her, but you've definitely seen her influence. Before Gigi, before Naomi, before Twiggy, there was Lisa von Sagrives, and her story, it's iconic. Born in Sweden in 1911, Lisa wasn't dreaming of fashion runways. She was a dancer, pouring her heart into modern dance. In fact, she moved to Paris to pursue it, but one day a photographer spotted her in an elevator. He saw her elegance, her grace, her almost sculptural quality, and asked her to model. Just like that, a star was born. Lisa didn't just pose for photos, she created art. She used her dancer's training to bring clothing to life, twisting and leaping in ways no one had ever seen. She was the first model to truly be a supermodel, gracing the covers of Vogue, Time magazine, and countless others. Photographers called her the highest paid, highest praised model in the world. But here's the best part. After dominating the fashion world for 2 decades, she simply said, "I've had enough." She retired from modeling and became a sculptor, a photographer, and a fashion designer, proving she was always first and foremost an artist, a true legend. Before there was Twiggy, before there was Kate Moss, before there was even the term supermodel, there was Dorian Leigh, a woman who would revolutionize the fashion industry and define what it meant to be a model in the golden age of fashion. It's the 1940s, and a 27-year-old mother of 2 walks into a modeling agency. Most would say she was too old, too short at just 5'5", and too unconventional for the industry. But Dorian Leigh wasn't most people. Within weeks, she was gracing the pages of Harper's Bazaar, and soon after, she became one of the most sought-after models in the world. What made Dorian special wasn't just her striking features, those mesmerizing grey-blue eyes and high cheekbones. It was her ability to transform. One moment she could embody sophisticated elegance, the next smoldering sensuality. The legendary photographer Richard Avedon once said working with her was like capturing lightning in a bottle. Remember the iconic Fire and Ice campaign for Revlon? That was Dorian, dressed in a stunning red sequined gown, creating an image so powerful it would define beauty standards for an entire generation. She appeared on over 50 magazine covers, at a time when being on just one was considered a career achievement. But here's what makes her story even more fascinating. She wasn't content with just being a pretty face. When most models would have gracefully faded into obscurity, Dorian reinvented herself. She opened a modeling agency in Paris, became a successful restaurateur, wrote cookbooks and penned her autobiography. And perhaps her most lasting legacy? She paved the way for her younger sister, Suzy Parker, who would go on to become an even bigger name in the modeling world. It ran in the family, you might say. When Dorian passed away in 2008 at the age of 91, she left behind more than just beautiful photographs. She left a legacy of breaking boundaries, defying expectations, and proving that true elegance never goes out of style. In an industry that often focuses on youth and conformity, Dorian Leigh showed that character, versatility, and determination are what really make a supermodel super. That's the story of Dorian Leigh, the woman who didn't just model fashion, she helped shape it. China Machado, born in 1929, China's story reads like a sweeping epic. With her unique Chinese, Portuguese, Indian heritage, she possessed a beauty that defied categorization. But in the 1950s, when the fashion industry was overwhelmingly white, being different wasn't always celebrated. It's 1959, and the prestigious Harper's Bazaar magazine has never featured a non-white model in its pages. Enter Richard Avedon, the legendary photographer who saw something extraordinary in China. When magazine executives initially resisted featuring her, Avedon stood his ground, threatening to break his contract if they didn't publish her photos. That's how China Machado became the first non-Caucasian model to grace the pages of a major American fashion magazine. In 1961, she broke another barrier, becoming Harper's Bazaar's first nude model. Think about the courage that took in the early 1960s. A woman of color, challenging not just racial prejudices, but also societal conventions about beauty and body image. Her influence extended far beyond the camera lens. China transformed herself from model to fashion insider, becoming a fashion editor at Harper's Bazaar and eventually rising to fashion director. She brought her unique perspective to television production and costume design, proving that her creative vision knew no bounds. What makes China's story even more remarkable is how she continued to challenge age barriers in an industry obsessed with youth. In her 80s, she was still modeling, appearing in campaigns for Kolhan and showing the world that beauty has no expiration date. When China passed away in 2016 at age 86, she left behind more than just stunning photographs. She left a legacy of courage, determination, and transformation. Every time you see a diverse face on a magazine cover or a model over 50 in a major campaign, you're seeing the ripples of China Machado's influence. She once said, "I was never a classic beauty, but I had something." That something wasn't just her striking features. It was her indomitable spirit that refused to accept the limitations others tried to impose. China Machado didn't just open doors. She kicked them down and held them open for generations to follow. Her story reminds us that true beauty lies not just in appearance, but in the courage to be yourself when the world tells you to be something else. China Machado wasn't just a model. She was a movement, and her influence continues to shape the fashion industry today.
And that's a look back at the timeless elegance of 1950s fashion models. From glamorous silhouettes to iconic hairstyles, their style continues to inspire fashion today. If you enjoyed this journey through vintage fashion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more fascinating fashion history. See you in the next video.